What if I told you there's a secret hidden in the Pyrenees that could rewrite the story of Christ? A code carved into stone, guarded by knights and Cathars for centuries. Join me as we follow Étienne through ice caves, deadly traps, and haunted ruins. And stay with me until the very end, because that's where we uncover the last piece of the Montségur Code and reveal the truth the world was never meant to know. If you love mystery and adventure, you don't want to miss a single moment. Listen until the end. The year was 1244, and Montsegur, their fortress in the sky, stood like a lonely crown upon the rugged peaks of the Pyrenees. For 10 long months, the armies of the French king and the Inquisition had surrounded it, choking off every path of escape. Smoke curled into the winter sky as catapults hurled stones that crashed against the walls like thunder. Inside, the air smelled of soot, tallow, and fear. In the deepest hall of the fortress, lit only by flickering torches, for knights knelt before a carved oak chest. The chest was bound in iron and sealed with strange runes, and inside it lay the object of 1,000 whispers, a manuscript said to contain the true history of Christ. Some claimed it revealed that Jesus had not died on the cross, that he had left descendants, and that the church had hidden the truth for centuries. One of the knights, his face streaked with ash, pressed his hand to the chest as if swearing an oath. "If we fall tonight, let us fall," he said, his voice low and steady. "But this must not burn." A distant horn wailed. The final assault had begun. Torches flared as they prepared their desperate plan, a perilous escape down the cliffs, into the darkness of the mountains. Behind them, Montségur's defenders readied for what would become a last stand, a pyre that would light the night for miles. Somewhere, high above, the stars seemed to watch. Midnight cloaked Montségur in a shroud of firelight and shadow. Flames licked the sky as the fortress burned, casting the mountainside in an eerie, blood-red glow. The 4 knights slipped through a narrow postern gate, the iron-bound chest lashed to the back of the tallest among them. Each man carried a sword, a dagger, and a grim understanding: if caught, they would be burned alive. The cliffside path was treacherous, no more than a goat trail carved into the rock, but the knights moved like wraiths, guided by the pale light of a waning moon. Far below, enemy torches bobbed like fireflies as soldiers patrolled the valley floor. The men descended in silence, their breaths steaming in the cold air, their chainmail muffled with rags to keep it from ringing. Above them, a sudden roar split the night. Montségur's walls had been breached. A cry went up, carried on the wind, and soon a rain of arrows hissed down from the ramparts. One shaft struck the rock beside them with a sharp crack, spraying stone splinters into the face of the youngest knight. He did not cry out. They reached the base of the cliff just as the fortress erupted in a final, defiant blaze. The night sky turned to gold. Behind them, their comrades were dying, a sacrifice to buy these few precious moments. The leader of the knights turned to the others, his face lit by fire. "To the river," he whispered. "And then to the mountains. We ride until the sun forgets our names." And so they vanished into the darkness, taking with them a secret that would outlive kings. By dawn, the 4 knights reached the banks of a rushing mountain river. Mist clung to the surface like ghostly veils, curling around their legs as they dismounted. The iron-bound chest was laid gently on the stony ground, its wood glistening with dew, as though even nature sought to hide it. Exhaustion gnawed at them, but there was no time to rest. The leader, Sir Arnaud, knelt in the damp grass, tracing a symbol into the soil with the tip of his sword, a circle split by a cross, the sign of their brotherhood. The others followed, placing their hands upon the chest. "By this river," Arnaud said, his voice hoarse but solemn, "we swear upon our lives that this knowledge will not perish. We will carry it to a place where neither priest nor king can defile it." The youngest of them, a boy barely 20, hesitated. "And if we are hunted to the ends of the earth," he asked. Then we will leave a path for those worthy to find it, Arnaut replied. A path of signs, of numbers, of words hidden in plain sight, a code that will speak only to those with ears to hear. One by one, they swore the oath. When the last vow was spoken, a strange stillness fell over the valley. Even the river seemed to hush, as though it bore witness. Then they moved swiftly, wrapping the chest in waxed cloth and strapping it to a pack-horse. Their path would take them deeper into the Pyrenees, into a labyrinth of caves and valleys where only the most determined could follow. Behind them, smoke from Montsegur still blackened the horizon, a grim reminder that they had become the last guardians of a dangerous truth. For 3 days and 3 nights, the knights rode without pause, climbing ever higher into the wilderness. The air grew thin, the forests darker, until at last they reached a hidden gorge where the mountains seemed to close in upon themselves. There, half hidden by a curtain of ivy, yawned the mouth of a cavern, black as the grave. They lit pine pitch torches and entered. The cave breathed cold against their faces, and the sound of dripping water echoed like the slow beat of a distant drum. Stalactites hung like teeth from the ceiling. To the youngest knight, it felt as though they were walking into the belly of some slumbering beast. At the farthest chamber, where the rock floor was dry and smooth, they set down the chest. Arnaut drew a dagger and pried open the lid. The manuscript inside seemed to shimmer in the torchlight, vellum pages bound with crimson thread, its ink black as midnight. Strange diagrams and lines of script danced across the pages in a language none of them dared to read aloud. This place will be its tomb, Arnaut said, until one worthy enough comes to wake it. They worked quickly, walling off the niche with stones, leaving behind no trace except for a small carving, a circle bisected by a cross, with 4 dots around it. Then, on the cave wall, they etched a series of numbers and letters, the first fragment of what would become the Montségur Code. When they emerged, night had fallen again. The stars blazed above them in perfect silence, as though sealing their secret. From this day, Arnaut said, our lives a forfeit to the code. We will scatter, each carrying a piece of the key. If one falls, the others must still guard the path. And so they rode into the night, leaving the cave to its eternal slumber, and with it, the secret that could shake Christendom. At dawn, they reached a lonely mountain pass where the wind howled like a choir of ghosts. Here, beneath a sky of pale gold, the 4 knights dismounted. The chest was gone now, sealed in its stone tomb. What remained was the burden each man would carry until his final breath, the key to finding it again. Sir Arnaut knelt and drew the symbol of their brotherhood into the frost-covered ground. Beside it, he carved a line of words in Occitan, ere the light returns when the 4 become one. This is where we part, he said, his face carved with exhaustion and resolve. Each of us holds a piece of the code, letters, numbers, maps, all meaningless alone, but together they will reveal the way. He handed each knight a small wax-sealed scroll. No 2 were alike. One contained a set of star positions and dates. Another held a riddle in Latin. The third, a sequence of numbers. The last, a simple sketch of a mountain that none of them recognized. The youngest knight's hands trembled as he received his part. If we scatter, who will guard the whole? He asked. All of us, Arnaut said. And none. The code lives only if we are never all caught, never all silenced. They clasped arms one final time. No tears were shed, their eyes spoke what words could not. Then, like foreshadows splitting at a crossroads, they rode away, one toward the western valleys, one toward the sea, one into the forests of Aragon, and Arnaut himself toward the distant north. Behind them, the mountains swallowed their tracks, and Montsegur's smoke faded from the horizon. The world believed the treasure of the heretics had perished in fire. Only 4 men knew it still breathed. And so the legend of the Montségur Code began. Centuries passed. Montségur's ruins became a silent monument, its stones bleached by wind and sun, visited only by shepherds and curious pilgrims. The tale of the last Cathar stronghold was told around hearts, half history, half legend, and the story of the 4 knights faded into little more than a whisper. Until one autumn evening in 1712. In a dusty monastery library near Toulouse, a scholar named Étienne de Lorme unrolled a bundle of forgotten parchments. Étienne was no ordinary monk. He was a linguist, a lover of riddles, and a man haunted by the mysteries of the Cathars. What he found that night froze his breath: a letter, yellowed with age, written in a flowing hand. It spoke of the 4 riders who fled the pyre of Montsegur, and of a Liber Veritatis, the Book of Truth. At the bottom of the page was a curious diagram, a circle split by a cross, with 4 dots arranged around it. Étienne's pulse quickened. He had seen this mark once before, carved on a weathered stone near the ruins of Montsegur during his travels. He spent days locked in the library, poring over the letter, copying its symbols by candlelight. The text hinted at a code, numbers corresponding to psalms, letters hidden in the margins of scripture, and star charts aligning with certain feast days. "This is not a fable," Étienne whispered to himself. "This is a map." But if it was a map, where did it lead? With trembling hands, he packed his notes and left the monastery under cover of night. If the Inquisition learned what he had discovered, he would burn as the Cathars had burned. The first piece of the Montségur Code had been found, and a centuries-old hunt was about to begin. Winter had just begun to creep into the Pyrenees when Étienne de Lorme arrived at Montségur. The journey had taken him days on horseback, through biting winds and lonely mountain passes. Now the fortress stood before him, a skeleton of its former glory, jagged walls and crumbling towers perched like a crown on the mountaintop. Snow swirled around the ruins, whispering through broken arches. He climbed the steep path to the citadel, his boots crunching on frost. As the sun dipped low, the ruins were set aflame in gold and crimson light, as if remembering the fires of that terrible night 5 centuries earlier. Étienne's heart pounded. He found the stone he sought near what had once been the chapel wall. Kneeling, he brushed away lichen with gloved fingers until the symbol emerged, faint but unmistakable, a circle split by a cross, 4 dots surrounding it like stars. "Par le ciel," he breathed. "By heaven." Closer inspection revealed something more. Within the cracks of the stone, almost invisible, were tiny carved numbers. Étienne took out his notebook and carefully copied them by lantern light, his breath fogging in the cold air. As he worked, a strange stillness settled over the mountaintop. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. He felt as though unseen eyes were watching him, as though the very stones of Montsegur knew what he was doing, and approved. That night, under a canopy of brilliant winter stars, Étienne deciphered the first part of the code. The numbers pointed to a specific date and time when a certain constellation, the Southern Cross, aligned perfectly with a peak deep in the Pyrenees. It was not just a clue. It was a summons. At dawn, Étienne set out toward the mountains, following the path of the stars and the footsteps of the 4 knights. Étienne rode deeper into the Pyrenees, where the peaks rose like jagged teeth against the steel-grey sky. Snowflakes stung his cheeks, and the wind howled through narrow valleys, carrying the scent of pine and frost. He followed the constellation's guidance, navigating hidden passes few dared to tread. After 2 days of relentless travel, he came upon a small, forgotten chapel nestled against a cliff. Its roof was caved in, and frost glazed the broken stained glass windows. Stone walls were blackened by centuries of storms, yet a sense of sacred purpose lingered, as if time itself had preserved its secret. Inside, Étienne found a strange carving on the altar, the same circle split by a cross, now accompanied by intricate symbols resembling musical notes and letters in an unknown cipher. He realized that the first clue at Montsegur had been only the beginning. The knights had left layers of the code, each hidden at sites chosen for their significance and secrecy. He traced the symbols with trembling fingers, feeling a chill run down his spine. A faint draft carried a whisper through the chapel, almost like voices of the past. Étienne could almost see the 4 knights kneeling there centuries before, swearing to guard the manuscript at any cost. Among the debris, he discovered a fragment of parchment, brittle and faded. It bore a map of the surrounding peaks, marked with symbols that suggested a hidden cave. Étienne's pulse quickened. The chase was no longer theoretical. He was following the very trail the knights had set, one secret at a time. Snow fell heavier as night approached, and Étienne pressed on, knowing that somewhere in these mountains, the Montségur Code awaited its seeker, and that he was now its chosen hunter. Étienne had followed the map fragment for hours, climbing steep ridges and skirting icy cliffs. The Pyrenees seemed alive around him, the wind moaning like ghosts, trees creaking under the weight of snow, and rocks shifting under his boots as if testing his resolve. At last, he came upon a narrow fissure in the mountainside, partially concealed by frozen vines. Inside, darkness swallowed everything beyond the torchlight. The air smelled damp and ancient, and the faint drip of water echoed like a heartbeat. Étienne paused, realizing this was no ordinary cave. It was designed to protect, to test, to hide. Scrawled on the wall in faint scratches were symbols identical to those in the chapel. A circle bisected by a cross, dots marking positions like stars, and strange letters intertwined with numbers. Étienne traced them, murmuring the code aloud. As he did, a small stone shifted beneath his touch, revealing a hidden recess in the rock. Inside the hollow lay a carved wooden box, locked with an intricate mechanism, a puzzle of rotating discs, each engraved with letters, numbers, and cryptic symbols. Étienne understood instantly. Only someone who possessed knowledge of the Montségur Code could open it. Sweat pricked his brow as he manipulated the discs, aligning numbers with letters, symbols with stars. The wind outside roared, as if impatient, while inside, the cave seemed to hold its breath. With a final click, the lock yielded. Étienne lifted the lid, revealing the first fragment of the manuscript, pages worn, ink faded, yet still brimming with secrets centuries old. The Montségur Code was proving true. But as he stared at the treasure, a shadow moved in the entrance of the cave. Étienne's heart froze. He was not alone. Étienne's hands froze over the manuscript fragment. The faint torchlight trembled as a figure stepped from the darkness of the cave entrance. Cloaked in black, hood pulled low, the stranger's face was hidden, yet the glint of steel at his belt spoke of deadly intent. "You found it," the voice rasped, echoing eerily against the stone walls. The Montségur Code, it belongs to those who understand its power, not to wandering scholars. Étienne swallowed hard. "I seek only knowledge," he said, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. "The manuscript is meant to be preserved, not used for greed." A low chuckle filled the cave. The figure stepped closer, revealing a gloved hand tracing the same circle cross symbol carved into the walls. "Knowledge?" he sneered. "The knights didn't hide this to teach, they hid it to control. Power lies in knowing what the world believes it cannot." Étienne tightened his grip on the fragment. He realized that retrieving the manuscript was only the beginning. Someone had been following the Montségur Code for centuries, waiting for the right moment to claim it. Snow swirled outside the cave, rattling the entrance. Étienne backed toward the wall, mind racing. If he was to survive and protect the secret, he had to outwit this shadow. Every lesson he'd learned from the knights, every symbol of the code, every star chart, It would now be a matter of life and death. The stranger advanced, hand reaching for the manuscript. Étienne's eyes flicked to the wall, the code, the hidden clues, the mechanism of the first lock, and he realized the Montségur Code was not just a puzzle. It was a weapon. The chase, the game, had begun. The shadow lunged, steel flashing in the dim torchlight, but Étienne had no intention of surrendering the manuscript. Instinctively, he backed toward the carved wall, tracing the circle cross symbol with trembling fingers. Suddenly, a small section of the cave floor shifted. A hidden trapdoor sprung open, revealing jagged rocks below. The intruder stumbled, his cloak snagging on the rough stone. Étienne seized the moment, reciting the first part of the Montségur Code aloud, the letters and numbers he had memorized from the chapel and the fissure. As he spoke, a hidden panel on the wall clicked and swung open, revealing a narrow passage lined with intricate carvings. The shadow hesitated. "What trick is this?" the figure hissed, advancing cautiously. Étienne moved into the passage, holding the manuscript tightly. The walls seemed to pulse, echoing the whispered secrets of the knights. Each symbol, each number, was a step forward, a riddle meant to confound intruders. The stranger tried to follow, but Étienne had anticipated this. A mechanism within the passage shifted, causing rocks to slide and obscure the way, leaving the shadow stranded in darkness. Breathing heavily, Étienne pressed on, guided by the code alone. He knew this was only the first test. The Montségur Code was not merely a map, it was a safeguard. The knights had designed it to protect the manuscript from anyone who did not understand its logic, its history, and its meaning. By the time he emerged from the passage into a hidden chamber, Étienne realized the true nature of the Montségur legacy. Knowledge was power, but only for those patient and clever enough to unlock it. And somewhere in the darkness behind him, the shadow cursed and pounded against the rock, a warning that the hunt was far from over. Étienne trúdam I mudru isa sib ostavi trag nesigurnog proganitelger eine starvi pramer siljedisimo dreditu. Sníjeg says bijau pod niegavim is marmur doc je planinskum stazarmer treos nakov koj, suvatezavi ostervili stolgesima prihe. Ene rubu umavite doline, ismu smers nutibarover, ugladau je malu kalibu, dravinu, zeklan genu odis vajeter, krov pricriven debilum slojum snajager. Unatrangist j bila skromner, kameniadum jarker, stari stol pricriven pranum, isa strain, stara nyoga eukonum uvazu. Na nyoj j bio urizen poznarti symbol, krug podigelgen cream, eteri tok uredno rasparine. Étienne j priar, ruk mudrail, iat vorio nyo. Stranes subile prepune buljeki hermiter koji j ivio ove davno, of jeker koji j uvau jalis Montségur Coder. Biljeki su ukazavale ene novu pesanu, scrivenu isa slapover ladin rejaker, idavail zeganetni uput karko dokidun g, kumbina siegers vajezder, rije upiesmia berhever is salarmer. Étienne osjeti us buinier I strar. Svarker zeganetker biler j korak bly rukapisu, oli svarker j isto vremeno donasiler opus nost. Ushio j trenutak, sluigeri hug vietrer I distantnium rejaker, caudie peroder sarmer ek niegov sligedechi potes. Es novum tragamuru karmer, Étienne crenudalier. Sviestan diegar silgediker tarper vodiu zamrinu pesanu idac samo resumajavenge Montségur Coder osigurarti niegov obstanak. Étienne arrived at the base of a waterfall, frozen into jagged icicles that gleamed like crystal daggers in the pale morning sun. Behind the icy veil, he spotted the entrance to a cavern, nearly invisible, hidden by cascading frozen water. The air was bitter, each breath stinging his lungs, but he pressed forward, torch in hand. Inside, the cave was a cathedral of ice. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like chandeliers, walls shimmered with frost, and the floor reflected his torchlight in fractured, ghostly patterns. The sound of dripping water echoed like whispers, and Étienne felt as though centuries of secrets were pressing in on him. Deep within, he discovered a stone pedestal carved with the familiar circle and cross symbol. Atop it lay another fragment of the manuscript, wrapped in oilskin to protect it from the cold. Around the pedestal, strange runes and numbers were etched into the ice itself, a puzzle left by the knights and Cathars. Étienne realized he had to solve it to access the fragment without triggering some hidden mechanism, perhaps a trap designed to protect the code. He traced the runes carefully, recalling the patterns from Montsegur, the chapel, and the Hermit's notes. Slowly, a sequence emerged, unlocking a concealed compartment within the pedestal. Étienne lifted the fragment, feeling the weight of centuries of secrets in his hands. A sudden crack of ice echoed through the cavern. Étienne froze. The cave was unstable, and the slightest misstep could send shards tumbling like knives. With the fragment secured, he retraced his steps, heart pounding, aware that the Montségur Code was leading him ever deeper into the mountains, and ever closer to truths that powerful men might kill to keep hidden. Étienne emerged from the ice cave, the cold air biting his cheeks, snow crunching beneath his boots. The mountains stretched endlessly, jagged and silent, but he sensed he was not alone. From the shadows of a nearby ridge, a figure appeared, tall, cloaked in furs, with eyes sharp as a hawk's. "I've been expecting you," the stranger said, voice carrying over the wind. "I know what you carry, and what you seek." Étienne's hand instinctively went to the manuscript fragment, clutching it protectively. "Who are you?" he asked. "A friend," the figure replied, stepping closer, revealing a weathered face lined with both age and secrets. "A descendant of those who first scattered the Montségur Code. My ancestors guided the knights, hid the fragments, and now I am here to ensure you survive the path ahead." The guide produced a small map, annotated with cryptic symbols, mountain passes, and landmarks invisible to ordinary travelers. "The next fragment lies beyond the Gorge of Whispers," he explained. "Few have survived its treacherous cliffs. Only someone who understands the code can navigate it safely." Étienne studied the map, feeling a mix of relief and unease. He was no longer alone, yet trust came at a price. Betrayal could mean death, and powerful forces had been hunting the manuscript for centuries. The guide extended a gloved hand. "Come. If we move with the stars and the code as our compass, we may yet recover all the fragments before others find them." With a nod, Étienne joined the guide, and together they disappeared into the winding trails of the Pyrenees, the first hints of night painting the peaks in deep indigo. The hunt for the Montségur Code pressed onward, shadows and secrets twisting around every snow-laden turn. The Gorge of Whispers lived up to its name. Snow-dusted cliffs rose like jagged teeth on either side, and a thin trail clung precariously to the edge of the mountain. Wind funneled through the gorge, producing eerie moans that sounded almost like voices or warnings. Étienne tightened his grip on the manuscript fragment, following the guide with cautious steps. Every footfall was a gamble. Loose stones shifted beneath their boots, and icy patches threatened to send them plummeting into the abyss. The gorge narrowed, forcing them to squeeze between sheer walls, where the only support was the gnarled roots of ancient pines clinging to the rock. Halfway through, the guide stopped, pointing to a natural overhang. "Here," he whispered. Étienne saw a hidden trap, a delicate bridge of intertwined roots and ice spanning a chasm below. One wrong step, and it would collapse. Étienne's pulse quickened. He recalled the knight's warnings etched into the code. Only the careful, guided by wisdom, may pass. Step by step, he placed his weight, listening to the subtle creak of the ice, following the rhythm of the gorge as if it were a puzzle. The guide moved confidently ahead, holding out his hand when Étienne hesitated. With trust and precision, they crossed the bridge, hearts hammering. On the other side, the gorge opened into a hidden valley, where frost-covered ruins hinted at human presence long forgotten. Étienne realized this was not just a path but a test. The Montségur Code was designed to protect the manuscript from anyone reckless or greedy. Only those who understood its logic, patience, and courage could advance. The next fragment awaited within the ruins, but Étienne knew danger was not over. Shadows lingered, and the mountain had eyes. The hidden valley sprawled before Étienne like a scene frozen in time. Snow crunched beneath his boots as he and the guide entered the ruins of a once sacred sanctuary. Walls half buried in frost, columns shattered, and stone carvings worn by centuries of wind and ice. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the whisper of the wind through broken archways. On a central pedestal, Étienne discovered a series of markings, more symbols of the Montségur Code, intertwined with astrological signs and musical notes, hinting at the method of unlocking the next fragment. The knights had hidden it not merely for protection, but as a puzzle. Each clue required understanding the previous, a chain that only the worthy could follow. Étienne traced the carvings, aligning symbols with his notes from the ice cave and the hermit's instructions. Slowly, a pattern emerged. The musical notations corresponded to letters, the stars indicated a date, and the numbers revealed a specific sequence. With trembling hands, he inserted the first stone he had discovered into a carved slot on the pedestal. A faint click echoed through the ruins, and a hidden compartment opened, revealing a small, leather-bound bundle. Inside was the second fragment of the manuscript, its pages delicate and luminous despite the centuries. Étienne's heart swelled. 2 fragments were now in his possession, the Montségur Code gradually unveiling its path. Yet, as he turned to the guide, a sudden shadow swept across the ruins, an ominous reminder that they were not alone. Someone had followed them, waiting for the precise moment to strike and seize the knowledge for themselves. The chase through history, mountains, and secrets was far from over. Each fragment brought them closer to truth and to danger. Étienne and the guide had barely secured the second fragment when the crunch of boots on snow echoed from the tree line. Étienne's heart leapt. From the shadows emerged a figure cloaked in black, the same merciless presence that had haunted the first cave. The glint of steel betrayed the threat. This was no ordinary thief, but someone well versed in the legends of Montségur. "Step aside," the figure hissed, voice cold as the mountain wind. "That manuscript belongs to me." Étienne instinctively reached for the fragment, the leather bundle pressed to his chest. The guide raised a hand, signaling him to move toward a narrow path winding along the cliffs. Étienne realized then how the Montségur Code was their salvation. The symbols etched in the ruins revealed hidden footholds and secret passages, designed centuries ago to protect the manuscript from pursuers. Step by careful step, Étienne and the guide navigated the treacherous cliffside, disappearing into a concealed canyon. Behind them, the pursuer followed, but the path narrowed, branches snagged his cloak, and loose stones betrayed his presence. Étienne's pulse raced. The code was not just a key to the manuscript, but to survival itself. Finally, they reached a concealed alcove, hidden behind a waterfall, where the icy spray masked their presence. Gasping for breath, Étienne examined the fragments. 2/3 of the Montségur Code now lay before him, and the chase, though relentless, had proven the wisdom of the knights. Only the clever and patient could keep the secrets alive. Outside, the wind carried the angry shouts of the pursuer, a reminder that every step toward truth was also a step into danger. Yet Étienne felt a surge of resolve. The manuscript was closer than ever, and so was the destiny the Montségur Code had prepared for him. Étienne and the guide pressed deeper into the mountains, the air thinning with every step. The path narrowed into jagged rocks and hidden crevices, and the wind shrieked like the echo of a distant storm. According to the Montségur Code, the next fragment was hidden within a cave that only revealed itself to those who understood the patterns of stars, stones, and ancient symbols. At dusk, They arrived at a narrow crevice partially concealed by hanging icicles. The guide gestured silently. Here, the manuscript's next piece awaited. Étienne stepped cautiously inside, torchlight illuminating frost-laced walls etched with strange carvings. The symbols matched those from Montsegur, the Hermit's notes, and the ruins, but now the pattern had become more complex, intertwining letters, numbers, and musical sequences that seemed to hum faintly in the cold air. At the heart of the cave, a stone pedestal jutted from the frozen floor. Étienne traced the carvings, aligning the symbols precisely as dictated by the code. The moment his fingers touched the correct sequence, the pedestal trembled, and a hidden compartment slowly opened. Inside lay the third fragment, bound in crimson threads and inscribed with additional riddles, a new layer of the Montségur Code that hinted at a final resting place beyond the mountains. Suddenly, a section of the cave floor shifted beneath Étienne's feet, a trap left by the knights centuries ago. He leapt aside just in time as sharp spikes shot up where he had been standing. Heart hammering, he realized the Montségur Code was more than a map or a puzzle. It was a guardian, protecting the manuscript from any who were careless, greedy, or unworthy. With the fragments secured, Étienne stepped back into the icy air, the night sky glittering with stars that seemed to guide him. Only one fragment remained, and the Montségur Code whispered that the ultimate truth lay just beyond reach, waiting for those brave enough to follow its trail. Dawn broke over the Pyrenees, spilling gold, and rose across the jagged peaks. Étienne emerged from the final cave, the complete Liber Veritatis cradled reverently in his arms. Snow sparkled around him, untouched, as if the mountains themselves were honoring the journey that had just ended. He paused, gazing at the horizon. The wind carried whispers of centuries past, the vows of the four knights, the secrets of the Cathars, the code that had guided him through peril and mystery. Every fragment, every symbol, every test had led to this moment. The truth was no longer hidden. Étienne knew the world was not ready for all of it, not yet. But the manuscript was alive, preserved, a bridge between history and legend. The Montségur Code had not only protected knowledge, it had forged a path, teaching patience, courage, and wisdom to anyone brave enough to follow. As he descended the mountain, Étienne felt the weight of destiny, but also the thrill of discovery. Somewhere, in towns and villages, scholars would feel the echo of his quest. Centuries of secrecy were now poised to illuminate the shadows. The fortress of Montsegur may have fallen to fire, and the knights may have vanished into legend, but their legacy endured, encoded in stone, parchment, and heart. And for those who would come after, Étienne knew one truth above all. The Montségur Code was eternal, a secret meant to guide, protect, and inspire, whispering across the ages that courage, knowledge, and perseverance can unlock even the most ancient mysteries. With the manuscript secured and the code alive, Étienne vanished into the mist of the mountains, carrying the legacy of Montségur into the world, a world now forever touched by the hidden truths of history.